Supreme Magus. Chapter 55. Politics and Ideals. Linjos was a man in his late 20s, about 1 meter 77 centimeters high. His ample made robe made his build a mystery. He could as well be a mountain of muscles or thin as a stick. He had a perfectly shaven long face and a cleft chin and aquiline nose. His hair was chestnut brown with shades of silver. His brown eyes were brimming with intelligence and worry. Lit could almost hear his panicking thoughts. Judging from the difference in treatment Lark and the star receive, he must be aware of how powerful she is at the moment. I am really curious to see how this will play out. The headmaster's bushy eyebrows were wriggling like furry worms while he was deciding how to face the unexpected event. He too has a light blue monocle, Solus observed. He is weaker than Ains, but stronger than anyone else we met, except for that headmistress Linnea. Blue must be the minimum requirement for the position. Well, this is really embarrassing to say, dear Marchioness, but I don't know if I can help you. Linjos considered Linnea's political stand ridiculous. He had firstly opposed to her motion during the last headmaster's council, but he had lost, even if by a small margin. The rules were clear. He could only follow the regulation approved by the majority of the council. Well, I think it will be easier than you think. The Marchioness sat down on an armchair, inviting Linjos to do the same. Watching the headmaster getting ordered around in his own office filled Lit with joy. I wish it was me, being so powerful, to make them all bend the knee. No more hiding, no more lies, just unbridled power. What do you mean? Linjos asked after sitting behind his desk. You see, I am partially at fault for this whole situation. If I had just told the truth from the beginning, nothing would have happened. But I had my own reasons. So I hope you understand how confidential it is what I am about to share with you. The headmaster's interest was piqued, and while it had no idea what she was talking about, he was a skilled liar, enough to know when to shut up and have her back. Of course, everything you say will never get out of this room. You have my word. You see, I met Lit a few years ago, and I was so amazed by his skill and talent that I took him as my apprentice. She closed into the desk, almost whispering. Both men were taken aback by that revelation. So, Nerea actually taught him only the basics. It was actually I that imparted to him the ways of magic. The problem was, and still is, that my family is under the scrutiny of too many eyes. I have too many enemies. So, to prevent that one of them could snuff him out before he could achieve his true potential, we decided to keep everything a secret and let the world think that Count Lark and Nerea were the ones actually taking care of him. That would explain a lot, Linjos explained in shock. His achievements are too outstanding for someone without a proper background, not to mention why the Count has taken the matter so seriously, despite that it came from a low noble appeal. Well, don't go there, mate, Lit thought. This Lark one more time, and you and I will have a problem. Exactly. The Marchioness nodded, passing him several papers that came out of one of her rings. I still cannot afford the truth to see the light. You know what happened to my daughter. So I would really like to avoid officially forcing you to accept him with the authority entrusted me by the king. It would raise a fuss on multiple levels. I hope that you can understand my position and that those documents will give you leverage enough to defend your standing if the council tries to reprimand you. Lin just read the papers and at some point almost jumped up from his chair. He is the one that cured your daughter and extracted the magical poison our labs are currently studying? He simply could not believe his eyes. The best healers among the Griffin Academy staff had tried and failed, while this kid was supposed to have correctly diagnosed the nature of the illness and managed to cure it. I'm sorry for being rude once again, but all the testimonies come from your family members. The council will surely object that this is just a ruse to force their hand. This story is simply unbelievable. Go to the next page, please. She didn't even care to hide her smirk. The second page was also a statement. Ains was one of the witnesses and reported everything he had seen during that day, giving a professional assessment on Lid's skills, pointing out and describing the numerous personal spells he had witnessed him using. Lin just went completely pale. Anne's testimony was a sworn one, just like the others, but coming from a mage, it had a completely different significance from that of a noble. Doubting his word was the same as calling him a liar and an incompetent. The consequences of that would be terrible. Despite being so young, his talent and power were beyond question, not to mention that the Black Griffin would become a sworn enemy of anyone who tried to taint their genius reputation. Such a heavy insult could even bring Ains to personally challenge whoever dared to question his judgment, and there was no headmaster that wanted to face him in a direct confrontation, be it at a magic duel or a contest of wits. The two documents were more than enough to defy the will of the council without repercussions, but Linjos wasn't the kind of man who acted on impulse. The fact that I can doesn't mean that I must do it, he pondered. Whatever I do, I will face a different backlash, either from the Marchioness or the council. From a political standpoint, there is not much difference, and that makes my decision much easier. If this kid is really so talented, it would be a crime against magic to blindly follow the words of those old fogies. I remember well how they opposed to me becoming headmaster, claiming I was too young, too radical for the position. It's time to teach them a lesson. Their wrinkly bottoms have been rooted to their chairs for so long that they have forgotten about the passion that teaching magic requires. I accepted the position the queen offered to me because I was disgusted seeing how academies were being reduced to paper pushers, neglecting to nurture true talents and bootlicking those who are already powerful for petty political gains. The Marchioness waited patiently. Being thoughtful was a plus on her book. Only idiots and lapdogs would mindlessly charge towards danger. I will be glad to take your disciple in my academy, but only if he reaches the minimum requirements. Under my guidance, there are no favoritism in the White Griffin. Both the Marchioness and Lyd had no objections. Lyd had been instructed about the admittance test by Nana well before his visit to the Lightning Griffin, and before going to the White Griffin, he had asked confirmation from the Marchioness. Nana's admittance had happened decades ago. Something could have changed over time, but from this third experience, the structure of the exam was still the same. Headmaster Linjos used his communication amulet to assemble the heads of all the magical departments in the test room. Lyd was curious about exploring the academy, but the headmaster opened another dimensional door, bringing them to the destination. It was a big square room with each side 30 meters long that seemed carved out of a single huge piece of stone. The walls, floor, and ceiling were all smooth with no gap except for a door. The only piece of furniture were several chairs lined up against the wall where the Marchioness, the headmaster, and the faculty heads sat as soon as they came out of several dimension doors. Lyd felt a new respect for fake mages. Compressing space with such ease, allowing instant movements, was something beyond his wildest dreams. When all the 7 heads arrived, the headmaster said, "Show us your basics." He was asking Lyd to show his proficiency with charm magic, the foundation of all magics. If only you knew what you are missing. Lyd inwardly smiled. Lyd took a deep breath, stimulating his mana core to its maximum output. He stood straight, extending his right hand upwards, right above his head, generating a sphere of dazzling white light the size of a chestnut. His sharp hearing could already listen to some whispered comments. Perfect silent light magic, trivial but effective. Hope he can do something better. I have so much paperwork in my office. Lyd openly smiled, moving his arm clockwise, and when it reached 2 o'clock, a fiery fireball appeared. 2 kinds of perfect silent magic, not bad for a commoner. Double casting, finally something interesting. The arm kept moving in a fluid movement, not letting them the time to chat. At 4 o'clock, a small thundercloud appeared. The audience started to get interest. Triple casting at 12 years? What a triple perfect silent! The arm reached 6 o'clock. A blot of pure darkness started consuming the light, pulsing with hunger. Both the headmaster and the Marchioness had already understood what it was. But while the Marchioness had seen it in action, Linjos was shocked. It couldn't be silver wings. At 8 o'clock, dust and dirt condensed into a small round stone, while at 11 o'clock, a small bubble of water constantly shifted between gas, liquid, and frozen state. By the gods, hexacasting with perfect silent magic. That's almost Magus Silverwing's mana hexagram. The last student that managed to do that, the headmaster hit the department head with the elbow, forcing him to shut up. Lyd's interest was piqued. Why interrupt him? Was the identity of that student a secret? There is no almost, he thought. His arm didn't stop. At the second round of his arm, the single dots of energy became connected by tendrils of power, forming a perfect hexagram inscribed in a circle. Through the shared connections, Energy started circulating until the single elements disappeared, leaving only a golden hexagram floating in the air. That was the reason why Nana had been admitted back in the day, and she had passed it down to Lit. Locra's silver-winged mana hexagram was a rare feat that barely a magician out of 100 was capable to perform. It was an exercise that demonstrated not only mastery over all the elements, but also a deep understanding of the mana flow. It emphasized the mental strength and focus. It was an unwritten rule that whoever was capable of casting the mana hexagram was automatically admitted, even if he or she was a slave. After that, they started to cast fake magic spells as fast as he could. Now he had to prove his mastery and control over the first 3 tiers of magic to skip the beginner's years. He was supposed to cast at least 20 tier 1 spells, but he performed 30. He could have done more, but avoided to. Lit had already studied and memorized all the White Griffin records. If geniuses scored 110 out of 100, 90 out of 100 was a perfectly fine result for him. He didn't want to get too much spotlight, just enough to get his talent recognized and maybe turn some professor into his backers, to spend the next 2 years in most calm and peaceful atmosphere. He was there to learn, not to fight. Let's stop at tier 3 spells. Going further would be too dangerous. Not only he would have exposed too much talent, but he would also risk to skip even the 4th year. Specialization courses started on the 4th year, and Lit wanted to remain in the academy long enough to assimilate everything it had to offer about forge mastery, and maybe even healing. Not to mention, he still needed powerful backers. When he finished, there was no applause or congratulation, but the gathered mages huddled up, starting to discuss wildly. Their whispers were loud enough that even with his old hearing, Lit would be still able to listen on them. Outstanding performance. The Marchioness had left the group as soon as the discussion started. She had no place in it. Thanks, Lit pretended, being tired and short of breath. Do you think I mean? Most definitely, unless heaven and earth turn upside down.